So let's do that. And we are recording, so let me share my screen with you. Okay, so let's do a test for the screen. Can you see my screen? Just do a thumbs up in the chat if you can see my screen. Excellent, that looks really promising. So let's start with this. Let me start the slides here. So most welcome. So firstly, excuse my, I'm a bit, I got the flu a little bit, so my voice may be a bit strange, but most welcome. So today I'm going to talk with you about setting up continuous integration and continuous deployment pipelines for your Azure functions using Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps is a really great tool to work with when it comes to setting up pipelines and setting up your whole DevOps infrastructure. I have really good experience with Azure DevOps. Before Azure DevOps, I used TeamCity and Octopus Deploy. TeamCity for doing builds and Octopus Deploy for deploying. Using Azure DevOps today, I would say it's much easier when you have everything in one tool instead of having all those multiple tools. Probably some of you have also worked with multiple different tools for doing these DevOps things. Like tools such as Jenkins or Travis or Hudson or TeamCity, as I mentioned, and Octopus Deploy. I think that we have finally arrived to a point where we have everything in one tool, and that really works great. And using Azure DevOps, you can do lots of things, such as having your let's say you're working with Scrum or Kanban. You have like Azure boards where you have you can work as a team using the boards, which is really great. So you have everything integrated into one tool, and I find that really great. Now Azure Functions. So firstly, my name is Siraj Ali. So I work at Making Waves. I'm a solution architect there. I help organize meetups for different user groups, such as the Azure User Group Norway, which you are all part of, and other user groups such as the Norwegian.net user group. And as you can see, I really like cats. All right. So Azure Functions. So as I mentioned, Azure Functions are really great. Really great that for your serverless architecture, you can use that to kind of like create your serverless components. And if you have usually you have this architecture where you have different APIs. Usually, maybe you don't want to have the whole, maybe you want to communicate not through REST as we are used to, like using the REST protocol, where you have all these callbacks going back and forth. So instead of that, you can have these these worker roles that just run in the cloud and just do operations, just do different functions. And this is why we have Azure Functions here. So Azure Functions are, if you have heard of worker roles and web jobs, these are the predecessors of Azure Functions. That's what we used in the past. But now we have the Azure Functions, which are just doing some operation, basically. Now, an Azure function can be triggered by multiple ways. It can be triggered by, let's say, by events, like event-based triggering, for instance, or it can be triggered by REST calls. You can also do that if you want to, or it can be triggered by timer triggers. So it has different kinds of triggers, basically. Today I'm going to, so this talk will be a very practical talk where I will show you a demo using the Azure DevOps and setting up Azure Functions and seeing how it works. So in the demo today, we're going to look at triggering an Azure function using timers, right? So that's what we're going to do today. So we'll just have a function which will be triggered sequentially based on a time. All right. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to use Azure DevOps today as well to show you how this whole thing works in practice. I think this talk is really, really great if you want to kind of set up your pipelines and start working with this in practice, because it's not very clear, documentation is not really clear on how to do these things, on how to set up your pipelines, and how to set up things like this, what we want to achieve here. Usually you'll find documentation which just shows you, for instance, like hello world, or like setting up something from your own local machine up to the cloud. And that's not really what we want to in a, let's say in a project, let's say in a client project, for instance, we want to set up a real architecture, a real infrastructure, right? And so we need to have these tools to do this job for us. So it doesn't help that a developer will do some setup from his own machine. And excuse me, just one minute. I'll be right back. Ja, sånn livestreaming. Yeah, I apologize. I had already booked this room for this streaming session, but some people just knocked on the door, so I just had to talk to them. So I'm back now. All right. So basically, as I mentioned that we need to have some kind of tutorial or a guide to show us how we can use these tools in practice. And this is what I'm going to, this is my goal today with this presentation, to kind of like do my best to show you how you can set up your whole pipelines for using these tools. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to use Azure DevOps and Azure Functions to do this. And also we're going to go into the Azure portal as well. So the Azure portal is the third thing here that we're going to look at. This is where you'll have your resource groups, your services, and this is where you basically will create all these services that you need to do. And there are several ways to do this. You can either do this through the portal using the graphical interface, or you can script everything, right? This is also possible, and this is probably the most common thing today that we do. We just script everything using ARM templates and blueprints to set up our infrastructure. But for this demo today, we'll just use the graphical interface to set up our services. All right, so now I'm just going to dive into the code and show you how this whole thing works. So let's go to. So here is, so basically, and what I want to show you today is, I want to show you how an Azure function runs on, so an Azure function can run on .NET Core and regular .NET. That's very important to remember, because sometimes we build, let's say we build a new application, a new system, and we want to integrate with an older system. This can happen. So you want to just do this integration. And then when you have new technology that has to work with older technology, you need to have a bridge that works. So that's why it's important to remember that our Azure function can run both on .NET Core and .NET, and the setup for an Azure function running on .NET Core and an Azure function running on .NET is different in the Azure portal. In Azure DevOps, the build pipeline is different. So I'm going to show that as well. So all right. So here basically I have created an Azure function for .NET Core. So if I just go to the properties of my project, we'll see here that we have .NET Core, and I'm here using .NET Core 2.0. I could have used 2.2 here without an issue. It's just I haven't installed the new frameworks. And if you, just to mention this, next week we'll have Visual Studio 2019 will be released. It will be released on April 2nd, so that's going to be awesome. So then we'll get all new things here, at least on my machine, and yeah. So what I have done here, just to save time, I have this is what I have done in advance before the talk. I just go to new project, and then basically we go to cloud. Then we click on Azure Functions, and that's how we create an Azure function in Visual Studio. And then when you click OK here, you then afterwards choose if you want the Azure function to run on .NET Core or on regular .NET. So in this case, I just used .NET Core. All right. So okay, so here's a very simple function. I have set up a timer trigger, and this timer trigger this is what we call a cron expression. This is basically a sequential pattern that we set, and each value here represents how often you want to run your trigger. So in this case, what this means here, it means that run this function every minute. That's what it means here. And I haven't memorized all these. Just to let you know, this is something that, at least for me, I haven't memorized this. So it's just, I just Google it, and then I find out that, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to run this every minute, and this is how it looks like for every minute. But you get the idea here. So if I put 2 here, it will be every 2 minutes, and so on. And and I think if I remember correctly, if we just do 1 here, it will be every 1 hour. But let's don't take my word for it. Just double check with the internet, so you know how it works. But this is cron expressions. So basically, what we're doing here is just we're going to log out a message, just saying hello world from Azure Function running on .NET Core, and we have like a config file that we read from, which is a JSON file, and this JSON file is I recommend that you don't include that in your source control. Just put this in git ignore, so you don't include it in source control, and instead just purely access it from the application settings in Azure instead. So if we go to this JSON file, we'll find some values here. What I'm going to do is I have written some code here that will be I will send an email to myself from this Azure function. This is what I want to do here. This is the code that I've written here in advance. Using the JSON file, we have our credentials there. I just have my email address, and I have it's okay, this is just an application password, which I will, just to show you as an example for this demo. Okay, and what you could have done here is that things like passwords, you shouldn't have it in application settings. Instead, you should use the Azure Key Vault. But that's a different talk, using Azure Key Vault. But you should do that. You should definitely use that. Okay, so now what we're going to do firstly is let's just run this function locally on my machine and see what happens. Now today I'm doing this talk from my employer's office, and there could be some firewalls that will block me from sending emails from my machine to my Gmail account. So let's just run this and see what happens. If it works, I'm gonna get emails with hello world. If it doesn't work, we'll get an exception, basically. And the funny thing is that I tested this from home, and it didn't work because most likely because I have a firewall at home. You know how we are developers; we're very paranoid people. So there's this router that I have at home with firewall, so it didn't work. As you can see, this is cool. Now I'm getting an alert here saying that we're trying to connect. This app is trying to get through the firewall, and let's say allow access. Basically, see what happens. It should work now in theory, and because we allowed access, it says hello world. Now that's really cool. Now let's go to my email inbox and see what happens. Let me see here. We didn't get. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so that works. That's cool. It worked. That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's stop this function now. So now it worked. That's great. Now let me go to Azure DevOps and see how our CI looks like, basically. So again, to save time, I have already created the CI pipeline. We're just going to go through it step by step. because these things take a lot of time, take a lot of tweaks. So so this is basically this is as you can see here, Azure Functions .NET Core demo CI. I just click on builds. So first you have to go to dev.azure.com, and then you have to log in with your account, your Azure account or MSDN account, which you get from your employer, or you can register for a free trial period. You can do that. So you go there, you log in with your account, and then when you have logged in, you create a new project, and then which is pretty straightforward. And then let me just explain how it all works. You go to repos, and then you create a new repository there for your application, which I have done in advance here, right? This is the regular .NET, so let's go to .NET Core. And then once you have done that, you click on pipelines, and then click on builds, and then you click here new, and then new build pipeline. When you click on new build pipeline, you will arrive to this screen here. And this is where the fun starts, really, because here we're going to set up our build steps, right? So basically, this is, remember that this is Azure Function running on .NET Core. So what this means is that we're going to use the .NET Core compiler to build our Azure Function. So basically, you have to click on this plus sign here, and then add a task, and then you choose the .NET Core compiler, right? So this is what I have done in advance here to save time. So firstly, you have to restore your packages, all your NuGet packages. And it's really good to have your own restore build step here, because this is where you get your NuGet packages. If you have like internal feeds, for instance, it could be possible that you have your own internal feed in your company that you want to define here. And then in addition, you will check this one, which is use packages from NuGet.org, so that you get global NuGet packages, right, available for the public, right? And then we have the build, which is basically, as you can see here, here is the restore command. So this is basically like writing in the command line .NET restore, right? .NET restore CS proj file. And then we have next one, .NET build CS proj file. This is what we're doing basically. And then you define your configuration. Build configuration is either debug or release. So build configuration here is a variable that we define in the variables here, build configuration release. And so that's great. And then we go to the test, and that's really cool for Azure Functions, is that you usually you want to have unit tests, right? And in Azure Functions, you should use XUnit to write your unit tests. So as you can see in my application here, I just have one test, which is like a canary test. Canary test is just checking that we have all dependencies are set up. So it's just like true equals true. And it's just checking that everything is set up correctly. If we look at the properties of this project, which is our test project, it's running on .NET Core. I was hoping that maybe we can see that it will say, yeah, it will not say that this is XUnit, because this is a generic test project in Visual Studio. But here you can see using XUnit, and that's what I recommend using here. Use XUnit for your Azure Functions. If you want to learn more about testing your Azure Functions, check out this link here, which I will share with you later, and you'll find in this video. So here it shows you in details how to write unit tests for your Azure Functions. So test, very simple here, test, and then again we define the build configuration. So we have all these three parts here. Now let's go to the next one. The next one is, so what we're doing now is that we have restored packages, we have built everything, we have run the tests. Now we have our binary files, our DLL files, runtime files are ready to be published, so that we can pick them up and then release them with our release CD pipeline. So we can release those DLL files to an environment, like to a server, which will be development, test, or production, and so on. And then once those DLL files are at the server, then our application is actually running as a service, right, with those DLL files. So Again, .NET publish, this is what we have to use here. And then here we define the, again, build configuration. And this is the output. This is very important. Here is where we say, please put the DLL files, place DLL files in this directory here. And this directory is predefined. So it's called build artifact staging directory. And the last part is, which is this one, publish the build artifacts. It's basically saying that, let me first go back here. What's important here is that you can also zip your files if you want to. And then the publish build artifact, well, this is, here we say, you know, here are our DLL files. They are ready to be published. So please take those DLL files from this location. And then this is what we call an artifact. So once you have your DLL files ready to be released, we call these DLL files artifacts, right? So we say that this is, we call this, we give this an artifact name, and we're done. That's it. Now let's go to the release pipeline. So you click on releases, and then you click on new release pipeline. And this is what I have done in advance. And this is the, if you go to edit here, let's see how it looks like then. So when you create a new release pipeline, you get to this view here, which looks like this. As you can see here, this is the name of the artifact. We're going to pick the artifact and then move those files to an environment. Like in this instance, we have production. I've created production environment. If you click on this lightning bolt here you can check this box, continuous deployment trigger. This will then trigger the release. If there is a new artifact available, it will then trigger this release pipeline. So that every time we push to, let's say, master branch in our code, it will eventually be triggered here by the CI. Now let's just go back to the CI for a moment here, because there's something here you also need to do, and that's here, triggers. If you click on triggers, enable continuous integration. So you need to do this here as well for your CI. Enable continuous integration. You check this box, and then you specify which branch you want this to trigger on. So here we just have one branch, master, and we go to the release here, and then we have this as well. So then this will trigger once we have basically a new artifact. So let's close this. Now let's click on the box here. If we click on this box, so what is this doing, right? What's this CD doing? The continuous deployment pipeline. What's that doing? It's basically taking the DLL files, our artifacts, and publishing them to a service, right? Running in the cloud. So everything that you do in Azure will be a service in the end. So an Azure function is a service, is running as a service in the cloud. And I will show you what that means basically. So we will deploy the service with our DLL files. This is what's happening here basically. And here, this is very important. Here is the path to the artifact, right? This is the path to the artifact. And here is the service URL. This is where our Azure function is running right now. So if we copy this URL here and we open a new tab, this is our Azure function right now running in Azure. Now, if we go to the Azure portal, in the Azure portal you have this, if you click on function apps, you see here I have two functions here that I have created. If I click on the .NET Core one, which is the one we're talking about, here is the URL, the same URL that you saw over there. So you need to create the function in the Azure portal as well, right? So this is what I have done in advance as well. So you need to do that. Or you can create an ARM template or a script to create the function for you, right? But you need to create this function in the portal as well. Okay, now let's go back to here. So we go back to Azure DevOps. So everything looks good now. We have everything ready now. So what I'm going to do now, I go to builds, I click on builds. And now let's go back to the code. If you remember, we enabled email sending now, right? So let's push this code and see what happens basically. Enable email sending, right? Excellent. Now, let's go to Azure DevOps. Now see here, it starts working here. So here's my push, my commit. If I click on it, you'll see here that it starts working now. So now it's going to go through all the build steps. So now let's just give it time and have some coffee in the meantime. A very funny story. On my way here to the room here, I was walking with my cup of coffee and it slipped my hand and just fell on the floor. So I lost all my coffee. So not good. Okay, now it's going through the test, running through that, and then it's getting to publishing. As you can see, it's pretty quick, it's pretty fast. Now it's publishing. Thank you so much for the virtual coffee. Cool. So now it finished the whole build pipeline, right? And the cool thing here I want to show you is that if you click here, artifacts, click on that, here you'll see how your artifact looks like. It looks like this, basically. All the DLL runtime files are placed in this folder. Excellent. If you click on builds again, you'll see now it finished with a green sign. That's excellent. Now we go to the releases, and now it starts releasing to production. So we click on that. Now it starts deploying to production, basically. So it's almost finished. And it's finished. So now if everything works as expected, I should be getting emails now very soon from Azure every minute. So I should be spammed very soon. So let's go to my email inbox and see what happens, basically. Yeah, and you can see it started working. It's working now, you see. 9:28. 9:15, that was an old email, but 9:28, that's from now. So it's working. 9:28, and we just let it run here. So it's running now from Azure, sending me emails to my email inbox every minute. And you'll be quite fascinated by the speed of this whole thing, so how quick it is. It's like it takes milliseconds to do this. So so let's just let it. As you can see now, 9:29, we got another email. So it's working now, working. So that's cool. That's really cool. Excellent. So now let's just let it run, and what I want to show you now is the Azure function running on .NET, regular .NET. Now the code for the Azure function running as regular .NET is very similar to the .NET Core code. Let's open that up, basically, and we're not gonna. Don't worry, it won't be like similar to what we did earlier now. Just going to show you how differences, basically. And we're going to have some fun now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to enable email sending from the regular Azure function, from the Azure function running on regular.net. So then I'll get lots of emails, and then we'll see where they're coming from. So this is the code for regular.net. Let me show you here. just takes a bit of time. So we right-click the project, properties, running on .NET 4.6.1, regular .NET. Very similar to the other one. Difference here is that we're using .NET Core, we inject with an iLogger, while for the regular .NET we use TraceWriter for logging. So now let's enable email sending from the regular .NET. And I need to start a new tab here. So just one moment. So we're going to push this, enable email sending. Yep. Okay, now let's go to Azure DevOps. Let me show you how the regular .NET build pipeline looks like. So again, new build pipeline, and then let's look out. And just to save time, I already pushed, right? So we're gonna check the deploy afterwards. So as you can see here, this is the regular .NET, and it looks a bit like the other one, but it's a bit different, right? There's one major difference here, and it's the build step. I mean building. So .NET Core is able to build the regular .NET, but for Azure Functions, I had issues to get .NET Core build to work properly for the regular .NET. So here I actually had to use MS Build, which is really amazing. I mean, I don't know why, but it just didn't work for me, so I had to use MS Build. If anyone has any ideas or thoughts on how to kind of get Azure Function running on regular .NET to work with .NET Core compiler, just let me know. This is the best way I found out. I just had to use MS Build, basically. So, but firstly, as you can see, I'm using the .NET Core compiler to restore the packages. So here we have to restore. So it's very important to do this also step, in sequence. You have to store your packages before you build. That's important to mention. So I restore my packages just as I usually do using .NET Core. But here's the MS Build. As you can see, it has this logo here, and it's called Visual Studio Build in Azure DevOps. This is the old school way of building .NET projects. It's using MS Build. So here, again, here is how I define the output path. So it's the same idea here, just defining the output path and using the artifact staging directory. And then we have the build platform. Build platform is like any CPU, and the build configuration, which is debug or release. And here we're using release. Running the tests as we usually do. And then we have the, then we use this one, which is archiving files. So as you can see, the setup is a bit different than the other setup. So we archive our files, we zip the files, and we point to this directory, right? And then we want to zip them like this. Then we publish the build artifacts like we did earlier as well for .NET Core. Cool. So this is pretty much it. This is the biggest difference, and the most important difference is that you use MS Build to do this here for you. Okay, now let's go to releases, and we go to the regular .NET, as you can see here, .NET, and as you can see, let me see here. Let me go to builds just to see what's happening with our build for the regular .NET. As you can see, it's still working. It's still building here for the regular .NET, which is okay. And then here we go to the releases, and again, new release pipeline. Let's look at how this one looks like. Again, same setup here, exactly the same setup here. The only difference is that if you go to open up this one, deploying the Azure service, and if you go down here, it's actually, yeah, the only difference is the name of the service. So it's exactly the same. The only difference is this one. And this is the one running for the regular .NET. So let me copy this and open up a new tab. Here is our Azure function running on .NET, which looks good. If you go to the Azure portal, we'll go to function apps. And then we go to regular.net. Here is our regular Azure Function.net, Azure Function regular.net running here, as you can see. Now let's go back to builds. It's still building right now. And if we go to my email inbox just for fun, see what's happening here. I'm getting spammed right now. It's all coming for .NET Core, right? So very soon, let's hope that we start getting emails running from regular .NET, not just .NET Core. So both of them. So let's once it has released. It's maybe a bit slower. Could it be? I feel that the .NET Core build pipeline was faster. Now it seems to be taking longer time. So it's finished. Let's go to releases. It's gonna start releasing soon. Yeah, it's almost finished. Almost there. It's a bit taking a bit of time. I feel that it's a bit slower than the .NET Core. Yeah. Yes. Let's see. Yeah, it's finished. So, so if everything works as expected, I should be getting emails now very soon now from Azure Function running on .NET as well as the .NET Core. So let's go to my email inbox and see what happens, basically. Oops. Yeah, so it worked, but I just have to apologize. I forgot to change the subject title here because as you can see, I did this talk some time ago for a user group, a different user group. So I just apologize for that. But as you can see now, it's working. It's working now. It's running from. We're getting emails from .NET, regular .NET as well as the .NET Core. So let me just. Yeah. So it's working. Yeah. You can see I'm getting spammed right now. Lots of emails. .NET Core and regular .NET. Cool, so that worked. That's awesome. Now, what I want to show you is the following, and this is really, really a nice thing to know. If you see here, this is the URL for your Azure function. If you type here .scm.azure websites, you'll get to a dashboard, a Kudu dashboard. We call this like a Kudu dashboard. It's called Kudu dashboard. And here you can debug your application. So let's say if you had some issues, you had some errors, some problems, you can go here and just look at the files in the server, the files for your service directly. So if you go to debug console, and you go to command line, you can browse the files which are located in the server, in the application server. So if you go to site, we go to www root. Here are our binary files. This is our artifacts located in the app server. So this is really good if you want to do debugging here and see what's going on with your service. If you get some issues, if you get some problems, this is really, really useful. So that's really awesome. Now let me go to the Azure portal and show you some other features here, which are really nice to know. If you see here, if I click on, this is the function running, right? It's called hello world, right? And this is for the regular .NET. Now what you can do here is you can run this function directly from the Azure portal if you want to. If you want to do some debugging, you can run it directly. And if you click on functions here, you can disable your function. So let's do that because now I'm getting spammed. So let's disable our function. So you can click here, disable, and it stops working then, which is really cool. So we stop here and let's disable the other one as well. The .NET Core, if you click there, functions, disable. So now email sending will stop. I will not get any more emails. So that's really great. You can do other things such as restarting your service. You can download the publish profile if you want to do a publish from Visual Studio, but you shouldn't do that because now you are like a pro at doing CI/CD. So you shouldn't publish from Visual Studio anymore. You should have CI/CD pipelines when you are building your applications. So yeah, so that was pretty much it. Let's go back to the slides. Actually, yeah, that's actually pretty much it. I just want to show you some contact information. If you just follow me on Twitter. If you have any questions, just please tweet to me, send me a direct message. Check out GitHub. I have lots of code there. Check out my blog. I have a technical blog. And send me an email if you have any questions. If you have any, we still have some time now. If you have any questions, we can take a couple of questions through Skype if you have any. If you don't have any questions, just contact me through those other channels here, as you can see on the slide. So let's go to Skype. Okay. Okay. So let's see here. Okay. So we have a question here. How would you be able to deploy multiple functions in one release? So usually you have one function solution, and this function solution has multiple functions, right? So if I wanted to create a different function, I just create a new file here called something function, and then I will annotate that method that runs with function name and give it a name, and then I have multiple functions running inside one function solution, right? And then you will have only one. You'll just have one continuous integration pipeline. You'll have one continuous integration pipeline per solution, right? This is how you will do it. So it's very easy. If you want more functions, you'll just extend your solution with multiple functions, and everything will just work by itself, because the continuous integration build steps we just take all the DLL files that come from the same solution and put those DLL files, publish those DLL files to our production environment or any other different environment. So you don't need to think about, you don't need to worry about that. Just extend your solution with multiple functions and everything will just starts working by itself. All right. Let's see here if you have some other questions here. Let's see. Oh yes, that's a really good question. We have a question here. How can one push of the code to one branch? Let's see. So I think if I understood the question correctly here, we have two branches. Okay, if you have two branches, you can use the same CI for different branches. And this is how you do it. Let's go to Azure DevOps. That's an excellent question. We go to our pipelines. We edit here. We go to triggers. And in triggers here, you can specify multiple branches. So here, if I have multiple branches, I'll just add a new branch and then define my branch here. And then let's say if I had a development branch, I'll just add a new filter for development. And now every time I push to development, the CI will build. And every time I push to master, the CI will build as well. So you don't need to create new CIs for different branches. You can use the same CI for different branches. You just define the filters here. Yeah, no problem. Now, if you want to, there's another thing, which is that let's say if you have deployed to your development environment and you want to promote to test environment, for example, right, or from dev to Q&A. So in that case, you go to releases, and in this case we just had one. We had just one environment production, right? But in the real world we have multiple environments. And it's really easy to, you click on add new stage, and then you add a new environment here. And then you can specify here, let me just try this out. Let me see. Let's rename this first. Let's call this dev, for example, right? We stop this new stage. Here, this is what we want, and empty job. It's just an example. And then we say here test. And it's really easy you can just say that for dev, you want to have continuous deployment to dev, but for test, you want to have manual deployment. So, manual deployment. So, and once you have deployed, once you have deployed to dev, right? Let me show you. Let me leave this. Once you have deployed to an environment, you have to click on the deployment, right? So there's a difference between the deployment that happened and editing the CD pipeline. So you have to go to the deployment that occurred. You click on that, and then here you have this. If we had another environment here, you'll have another option here called deploy to or promote, something like this, right? You click on that, and then you take the same release package, and then it will be deployed to the other environments. Yeah. All right. We don't have any more questions, so unless we can take one more question if there is. No, it doesn't seem like we have any more questions. So thank you so much for attending. I really hope that you enjoyed this. This is recorded, so I hope that if everything worked as it should have, I should be able to have the video file. So we will put this video on YouTube for the Azure User Group Norway, so you can get this. You can get all this. I wish you all a wonderful day. I really hope you enjoyed this, and see you soon again. Goodbye.